Okay, let's talk venture capital now. Whether a token or a coin has access to venture capital can radically change the direction and success in the marketplace. And I've got a really good example to show you later on. You cannot find a clearer example than SUI and Kaspa. Both projects started at approximately the same time. But the trajectory that they're on and their approach to the market are radically different, and we'll show that over the next couple of slides. At the moment, and at the time that this slide was created, the SUI emissions were around 30% of all the coins that were going to be in existence. And then there was an emission schedule, which is approximately 0.8% per month. Kaspa, different approach to the market. Their tokenomics are radically different. They are trying to get all of their tokens out as early as possible so that there's a very wide distribution of tokens to a broad collection of stakeholders. There's an interesting fact here. In 2024, the Kaspa emissions were more than all of the future Kaspa emissions between 2025 and 2037. So you can see very quick and radical emission schedule, which then gets curtailed towards the back end of the process. SUI has taken a different approach, and they've said, okay, let's keep it constrained, let's keep it tightly held. And if you look at the market cap of these two products, initially Kaspa was doing better than SUI, but you can see at the beginning and the end of last year really, SUI's market cap sort of quadrupled in comparison with Kaspa. I think one of the most interesting things about SUI, and it's sort of illustrated by these slides, and in a moment we'll go and have a look at the live website and the real latest stats. But this is a vesting schedule, you can see it here, where insiders have sort of a lock on most of the early coins and tokens, and there's a release schedule that is fundamentally aligned with the end of the bull market. Coming back to our dear friend CryptoRank, looking at SUI and the vesting schedule, and we're now June 2025. SUI raised $380 million, and it did so a couple of years ago and was able to build a huge team, get a big roadmap going, get a lot of backing and credibility through that process. And if you look at the Series A investors and Series B investors, I don't know what they paid for these tokens, whether they paid or not, or whether the equity investment they put in gave them rights to having what looks like 7% of the supply. But I do know that today, their investment of $320 million, if you're talking about the Series A team, 7% of the supply, or 700 million SUI coins, is probably worth now about $2.1 billion. That's a fantastic return for the people on the inside. What's also very interesting is that the allocated for after 2030, 50% of the coins haven't been allocated yet. And we don't know what's going to happen with those. But it's abundantly clear when you look at the vesting schedule, when you look at the people who invested, and you look at where the tokens have been distributed and the people who've got those tokens, including the internal team. You know, even the Series B people, for example, they're going to be out by the end of this year, which is approximately the time of the end of the bull run. They have the right, but they don't have the obligation to sell those tokens, but they've been unlocked now. So the insiders are going to do extremely well from their initial investment into SUI. There are two completely different philosophies at play here. SUI, as we've already discussed, it raised $380 million in 18 months. It's a proof of stake network, VC backed. 30% or so admitted. Most of those coins are aligned with insiders and investors. And the ecosystem, because of that money, the expansion, the ability of the team to get moving very quickly, they were able to get the sort of features rolled out quickly. They got 9 million active accounts and a really large, well, not really large, but a growing ecosystem of level 2 apps. And SUI was fundamentally created out of the team that started at Facebook. So they had this credibility. Facebook decided they didn't want to go down that road anymore. The team left, they got some venture capital, and now they've done this, and they're going to be a very significant player in this space. and they're going to be there quickly, and most of the value will be left with the insiders and the investors. If I talk about Kaspa now, it's a completely different approach. Fair launched, every token is mined. It's proof of work. It's open source. There's no centralized control. To be honest, they were having an argument the other day about who was in charge of the X account for posts, because they don't want to have a centralized authority to determine these things. I showed it you earlier in one of the earlier modules where we talked about that block DAG approach and the moment when it transitioned from 1 block per second to 10 blocks per second. Again, very innovative technology, open source, and driven by a small team of very smart people. Let's look at the tokenomics now. It says 89% on the slide. It's now over 90%. And it's heavily front-loaded. And why did they do that? They did that because they wanted the community, the person with the laptop, the person that had a graphics card, the person that ultimately became an ASIC miner. They wanted those things the early believers to get the value and to spread those coins as far and wide as possible and not have a concentrated group of holders. 0.6 of a million active addresses. But it's community driven. And there's a relatively slow rollout of new features. It's heavily decentralized. And it's driven by industry thought leaders. You cannot find a more stark example of VC-backed growth and community-driven. The question is, who will win in the long run? And I don't know the answer to that. But I do know for a fact that if you look at Bitcoin and other community-driven initiatives, if you give them enough time, they can radically change the world. And there's a potential for Kaspa to be able to do that.